So imagine this. You're at a wedding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the father of the bride gets up to give a speech. Now, that really heartfelt, emotional moment.
Yeah, it's supposed to be beautiful, full of hope and love.
Exactly. But
Mm.
what if those same words, that blessing, what if years later they sound different? Less like a blessing, more like...
Like a script.
Yeah.
Something carefully put together. A narrative.
Precisely. Especially when you look at them, through the really stark, sometimes troubling lens of allegations that came out later. Today, we're doing a deep dive. We're looking at excerpts from this analysis called From Blessing to Betrayal, the untold side of Marcus Lamb's wedding speech.
Okay.
I'm going to unpack the words Marcus Lamb said at his daughter Rachel's wedding.
Right. Comparing that public face.
Yeah, the image presented with the stark contrast of later claims, things like alleged abuse, power struggles, even staff mistreatment inside Daystar.
The ministry he founded, yeah, big evangelical network.
Before we move further in the podcast, we will appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. Also, share your thoughts in the comment section.
So our mission here really is to try and understand how these public statements, especially from leaders, can build such a powerful image.
And shape how people see things, absolutely.
And then what happens when that carefully built image gets hit with, well, very different versions of reality?
We'll be looking closely at the language, won't we? The specific words used.
Definitely, the layers of meaning behind it all. So why should this deep dive matter to you listening?
Well, it's bigger than just one speech, isn't it?
It really is. It's about the power of narrative itself, the weight that comes with a public endorsement.
And how we navigate that space between what we're shown
And what might actually be happening behind closed doors. It's really about how context, especially stuff that comes out years later, can just completely change how we understand things.
totally shifts the perspective on past events, even seemingly innocent words.
Okay, let's dig into this analysis then. Our source starts off describing the speech, Marcus Lamb's speech, as this tapestry of love, pride, and divine blessing.
Sounds very moving, the way they put it.
It does. And apparently he called Rachel a missing piece of his heart.
Hmm.
A really touching thing to say.
But what's interesting is how the article jumps right on that. It points out that for public leaders, especially in ministry, these kinds of emotional moments, they often become moral endorsements.
Ah, okay. So not just fatherly love.
Not just that. The analysis suggests it was actually laying the groundwork for an image the Daystar audience would buy into.
Right. Turning a personal moment into something with, public weight.
Exactly. Wider implications for trust, for perception.
And he definitely used that kind of language.
Yeah.
Emotional, spiritual, lines like, from the first time I held you, I knew you were a gift from God.
Setting a very high bar there, spiritually speaking.
Yeah. And then emphasizing his role, saying he'd strived and I've tried to lay a foundation to help you grow into the young lady God desires you to be.
Those aren't just off-the-cuff remarks, are they? They feel quite deliberate.
They do. And that spiritual language, the way it elevates Rachel's character almost to a divine standard.
That becomes really significant, especially coming from someone with his platform.
Right.
And then when he connects that to the idea that a father sets the benchmark for choosing a husband, well, he's essentially telling millions of people,
His audience, yeah.
trust my judgment of Joshua.
Wow.
That's where that public trust gets cemented right there, that endorsement of character. It's quite strategic, really, building confidence in the marriage and, by extension, the family.
Okay, so if Marcus set this really high benchmark, spiritual, moral, for his daughter, for her husband, then our source points out, today, that's exactly where the cracks show.
Right. Hindsight changes everything.
It does. The article asks pretty bluntly, did this benchmark fail spectacularly? If these really serious allegations against Joshua Brown, his son-in-law, if they're true.
It forces you to look back at those glowing words very differently, maybe even with suspicion.
And here's where the source material, it takes a really interesting turn because it brings in allegations about another person, someone named Pete. It kind of shifts focus from just Joshua.
Right, broadening the context within Daystar.
Yeah. And it includes this clip, I think from NTCM-TV, an independent media outlet.
That sounds right. Yeah, one that often investigates religious groups.
And they ask, was Joshua Brown protected, in spite of his sin?
A tough question to ask publicly.
But then it gets even more direct, maybe even shocking. It asks, wait, Pete was gay before he ever joined Dare.
Oh, wow.
For how long? And you're telling me Marcus and Joanne never ran a background check?
That's If that's true, the lack of a background check, that's a huge claim for an organization promoting certain moral standards.
Huge implications, yeah.
Yeah.
The analysis then details some specific allegations about Pete, that he allegedly liked to come on to guys.
Okay.
And it claims Rachel, allegedly, was never given the benefit of a warning about this.
So potentially putting her in a difficult situation without information? Seems like it. And maybe even more concerning, it says Pastor Russell supposedly got a letter about these concerns, but did nothing.
Wow. So claims of knowledge and inaction within the leadership.
Exactly. Serious stuff. But maybe the most striking part is Marcus's alleged reaction to all this.
Like how he handled it.
Yeah. The source quotes someone directly involved. It says, "My dad sat me and my brother-in-law down in his office a few days after Pete had gone up to the counselor.
Okay.
And he basically said, Pete has been cleared by this forensic counselor. He is deemed innocent."
Cleared. Deemed innocent. Strong words.
Very. And then the demand. "And if you continue to believe that Pete is you know what, then you need to get another job and you need to submit."
Submit. That's incredibly powerful and potentially chilling. That demand for submission, even from family.
It really is. And it raises this big question about leadership, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What does it mean for someone in his position, spiritually, publicly?
To just unilaterally clear someone like that and then demand that others, even close family, just fall in line, regardless of their own concerns.
Especially when the source also points to that alleged lack of a background check for Pete in the first place.
Right, which suggests maybe a procedural lapse, at least.
But then you combine that with this intense pressure to just accept Marcus's decision.
It creates this really stark contrast, doesn't it, between the divine moral standard he talked about in the wedding speech
And this alleged heavy-handed approach behind the scenes.
and the mention of a forensic counselor in that quote. It's interesting.
How so?
Well, while these professionals do offer specialized assessments, the idea that a leader can just take that and declare someone innocent, period.
Yeah, and use it to demand submission.
Exactly. It raises questions about, the scope of those clearances and what a leader's role should actually be when dealing with allegations inside an organization.
Sounds very top-down. Authoritarian, maybe.
It certainly suggests that kind of approach, which again seems to clash with the public image of spiritual leadership.
Okay, let's pivot back to Rachel for a moment. The public image from the speech.
Right. The portrait Marcus painted.
He called her fearless, compassionate, and deeply faithful. Very positive terms.
Mm-hmm.
And he told that story, the kind the source says is designed to really connect with an audience.
The anecdote.
Yeah, about seeing a homeless person. "Mom, Dad, we've got to stop. We got to stop."
Portraying spontaneous compassion.
Right. And he talked about her passion for missions around the world, even as a teenager, how she inspired him with her determination and her tenderness.
It's a very idealized picture, isn't it? Almost flawless.
So that's the public image.
Yeah.
But what does our source say when we compare that glowing portrait?
To what former staff allegedly reported.
Exactly. The material we reviewed says these former staff allege arrogance, mistreatment, and power-hungry leadership from Rachel.
Wow. That is quite a disconnect, almost jarring.
It really is. A dramatic departure from the narrative Marcus built in that speech.
And this is really where that gap, that discrepancy between private reports and public narrative becomes glaring, as the article puts it.
Yeah.
It also brings in Susie Lamb's view on Rachel's personality, a different perspective.
What did she say?
That Joannie and Rachel are very, very similar in personality. They're type A, very dominant.
Very dominant.
Yeah.
That certainly sounds different from just tenderness and compassion.
It does. It adds another layer, suggesting a personality type that maybe doesn't align perfectly with the public image cultivated by Marcus. And beyond just personality, the analysis even questions the description of her missions work.
How so?
It suggests Marcus has either lost touch with what true mission work entails, or he lacks a proper understanding of its meaning.
Questioning the substance behind the label.
Precisely. So that gap between the flawless portrait Marcus just painted and these emerging allegations from people who supposedly worked closely with her.
It makes that difference between perception and reality feel even more jarring, like the source says.
Yeah, much harder for an outside observer to reconcile. It forces you to ask, what was really going on? What did missions mean in practice? And how did it fit with the alleged internal behavior?
And our source takes it another step. It describes those heartwarming stories in the speech on the homeless person, the mission stuff.
Yeah.
Calls them powerful image armor.
Image armor. That's a strong phrase.
Isn't it? suggests it's not just pride, but something more strategic,
Hmm.
more defensive.
And that connects to this concept they introduce, preemptive reputation shielding.
Okay, what's that?
The idea is basically if you can convince the public that someone is just fundamentally good, inherently compassionate,
Mm-hmm.
then any future accusations, any negative stories can be more easily dismissed, spun as misunderstandings maybe, or even attacks from enemies.
I see. So it's strategic. It's not just telling nice stories.
According to this analysis, yes. It's framed as an intentional effort to build this almost unshakable public identity.
Making it harder for criticism or allegations to stick later on.
Exactly, like building a psychological buffer against bad news.
Now, there was a specific word choice in the speech that the article really zooms in on. It's subtle.
Okay.
Instead of saying he would give his daughter in marriage, the traditional phrase, Marcus said he would share his priceless treasure with Joshua.
Share, not give. That is interesting. Why focus on that word?
Well, the analysis argues that Marcus, as a theologian, a public figure, he understood the weight of words.
He'd know the nuances.
Right. And the source suggests that, especially in American evangelical culture, sharing carries these layered meanings.
Like what?
Things like intimacy, sure, but also ongoing connection. Maybe even a sort of co-ownership of influence.
Ah, so not just handing her over, but signaling something more. Intertwined.
That's the argument, implying maybe a continued integrated connection within the family, within the ministry, an ongoing bond, both personal and professional.
And that raises a really key question for us looking back, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, considering the allegations against Joshua and what we know about the internal dynamics at Daystar, that word share starts to feel really loaded with implications Marcus may have never intended the public to forget.
You mean, was it a subtle hint about control or influence?
Or maybe just, does hindsight make us read too much into it? Does it just cast this different, maybe darker shadow on every single word he said that day?
So we're left wondering about the original intent versus our current interpretation.
Exactly. The ambiguity itself becomes part of the story we're analyzing.
Marcus went on in the speech to declare Joshua not just worthy, but the man to share his most priceless treasure.
Reinforcing that idea.
Yeah, and the article calls this specific moment brand crystallization.
Brand crystallization. Meaning.
Basically defining someone, in this case, Joshua, in these absolute flawless terms, especially when you're presenting them to this huge public audience.
Establishing that perfect, unblemished image, like creating a brand. But the analysis adds a crucial warning here. It uses this great metaphor. Diamonds can have hidden fractures.
I like that. Powerful image.
Isn't it? And it connects directly back. If the claims about Daystar, the power struggles, the abuse allegations, the cover-up claims, if they're accurate,
Then what?
then Marcus's judgment, his act of choosing wisely, well, it might start to sound like a tragic miscalculation.
Or worse.
Or potentially an intentional false front.
Wow. So that perfect image, the brand crystallization, it just shatters under the weight of these alleged private realities.
Yeah, it shows just how fragile that carefully built public persona can be when confronted with conflicting accounts, how wide the gap between public perception and alleged private truth can become.
Towards the end of the speech, Marcus used a very emotional hook, really personal, aimed at his daughter. I love you, you're daddy's girl, and you're my rap girl.
Sounds very intimate, very loving, the kind of thing that resonates.
It does. But our source immediately brings us back to the context.
That these weren't just private words.
Exactly. Marcus's words weren't just personal, they were public performance.
Right. Not spoken in a quiet living room.
No. This was broadcast, recorded, and archived for potentially millions of people to see and see again.
And what's the impact of that archive now? Especially when all this other challenging information has surfaced years later.
Well, that's the final point the analysis makes, and it's powerful.
How does it play now?
It says, today, those archives play very differently. What might have sounded like a timeless blessing back then
Full of hope, pure affection.
now sounds, quote, more like the opening scene in a story of falling empires.
Wow, that's a strong conclusion.
It really is. It sums up how those initial, carefully crafted public narratives can be completely reinterpreted, dramatically altered, really, by later events and new information.
The words haven't changed, but our hearing of them has.
Profoundly. Reflecting shifts in how the audience perceives things like authenticity, integrity.
So we've really journeyed through the layers of this speech, haven't we?
We have. Looked at how a father's public blessing can set the stage, build an image,
But also how later events, serious allegations, can just fundamentally change how those words land,
Yeah.
how they're understood, how they're judged.
So, thinking about you, the
Yeah.
listener, what's the takeaway here?
Well, this deep dive really underscores the importance of critical thinking, doesn't it? Especially when we encounter these big public narratives from influential figures.
Definitely. It pushes us to think about the intentions, maybe unseen, behind public statements.
And the huge impact that alleged actions can have on someone's perceived character, no matter how beautifully the original story was told.
So maybe here's a final provocative thought for you to wrestle with.
Okay.
When these deeply personal moments are deliberately turned into public performances, shaping how we see people, even whole organizations,
Yeah.
how much responsibility should we put on the speaker for the images they create, for the expectations they set?
That's a tough one.
And when the facts seem to change so dramatically later on, what does that do to the original blessing?
How do we reconcile the two versions?
Exactly. How do we make sense of it? And maybe most importantly, what does it teach us about the narratives we choose to believe and why we choose to believe them?